Thank you. We'll get to this. Get rid of this. And we do. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Really good to see you. So we've got a couple of new folks who are around our table today, because two ways you become a member here or a mission partner, which I'll talk about in a minute, is through taking this class, your baptism, and then taking this class, and then you affirm your faith, or you transfer from another congregation. And so Jackie and Chuck McClung have been here for a long time and transferred, I suppose, officially quite a ways ago. But this is Pastor Jonathan's wife, Karen's mom and dad. So just so you know, that's, so, and we're just delighted to have them here, and used to live in Westland, yeah, Oregon, and moved up here a number of years. Well, was that pre-COVID?
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago, okay, it was in the middle, yeah. And Marge Carlson, who's a faithful participant online, yeah, and can't always get here in person, but just delighted you could be here.
Too. It's just a pleasure.
Yeah. So, why don't we, since we've got a couple new folks, just, even though you won't remember names, that's fine. Let's just do, Becky, may we start with you, and we'll just go around just so folks can hear your names. Yeah.
Okay, my name's Becky DeWitt, and actually I'm in the process of transferring my membership from First Lutheran Postal. So I've already sent them an email.
Oh, great.
So I haven't heard, I don't know what happens next.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right,
yeah.
Good. Yeah, and that's good. If you're coming from another ELCA Lutheran church, you can do that.
Okay.
And then the other way to go about it, then I'm glad you emailed them, because that gives some direct communication there. And somehow I had forgotten that you were plugged in there, or had been in the past. You can have Bruce, our office manager, you can say, and we'll send a letter officially requesting that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool.
Valerie Otime.
Paul Otime.
Gloria Smith. Debbie Green.
Patrick Herring.
Victoria Herring. Jackie McClung.
Chuck McClung.
Linda McElroy.
Jason Slocum.
Yep.
Christy Slocum.
Yep.
Marge Carlson.
Perfect. All right, and folks we don't have here tonight are Kyle and Jewel, and then the Ciraldi family, Ginger and Art, and their two girls, May and Greta. So welcome. Let me open us with a prayer. Gracious and loving God, thank you for this moment where we've been in study together, and we get to celebrate tonight being part of the ministry of Silverdale Lutheran Church. And so we pray that this will be a helpful time and a joyful time as we look forward to the 21st, when we officially affirm our baptism and welcome new members. So we pray that you'll just bless us with your spirit tonight, in Jesus' name. Amen. And help the crack and help my Phoenix sons. All right. Okay. So, welcome. I want to start off by telling you just a little bit of the story of Silverdale Lutheran. It's going to be a quick brushstroke. Silverdale Lutheran's roots are with the Norwegian community, the Norwegian Lutheran community. Remember how I think we kind of talked about this, but we didn't really get into it in detail because that could get quite boring. But if you think about all these immigrant groups coming over from Europe back, starting from the foundation of our country, really, but a lot of Lutherans came over from Europe. You got Scandinavians, Lutherans, you got Finns and Norwegians and Danes and all kinds of, and in each of those countries, the Lutheran Reformation kind of took root. And so folks, when they immigrated, they came over as Lutherans. but they were separate. They were not of like one, like whereas the Roman Catholic Church, everybody's Roman Catholic, the Lutherans all were different. Lots of German, Lutherans and et cetera. So you think about that, well, over the years of the country, they started merging together, because we're pretty similar, and especially when they stopped speaking the native language and started speaking English. That was a big deal, by the way. When in my first parish, I was the first pastor, if you can believe it, I got ordained in '89, and I was the first lead pastor that didn't speak conversational German.
Really? Wow.
So that church really held on to its ethnicity for a long time. But nonetheless, so, we had that history. Well, Silverdale Lutheran was that good Norwegian side of things. And we still kind of celebrate that. We've got some families who go way back. And there was a small little Central Valley Lutheran Church that, anyway, it's a little bit complicated, but a group formed in Silverdale Lutheran, and where the original church is, you pass it every day. No, if you go down through Old Town Silverdale, our place, it's a bar, that was this church. So, yeah. After softball games a number of years ago, we used to go to church, have a little refreshment after the game. But yes, that little log cabin church was this congregation. They became too large for that space, and then they built what used to be the community center here. It got tore down just not too long ago because they just couldn't rescue the building and whatnot. But it was right there near the YMCA, where the YMCA is. Used to be the community center. That was this congregation, and then they sold it to the county, and they used it as the community center. And so that the evolution of the building, that's where they've come from. And they bought this property in like late '80s, and this part of the building, which I'll show you in a minute, was built in 1990, the gathering place in 2003. So that's the facility, but a wonderful evolution of folks who cared for the church and stewarded the church, and Silverdale Lutheran's been through its ups and downs. Tough times sometimes with pastors, staff, just like every church. We're sainted sinners, right? So they've had their struggles and joys, and Jonathan and I have been partners together for 15 years. I've been here finishing 16 this summer, and we'll start 17. Somebody told me just recently, you're the longest serving pastor ever. But anyway, that's a great team. The team before Jonathan and I came was Al Berg and Jeff Froner, and they were together for, I don't know, a good 10 years, and did a terrific job. And then there's some interim pastors and whatnot. So a really strong Lutheran voice. And then when they moved up here, it just has really flourished. This is a beautiful campus, as you can see, and it was a really smart move, depending on, I suppose, the way one would look at it. But anyway, so that's a little of SLC's story, just the bare bones of it. Questions about that? Okay, so our campus. Let's see. I guess I have to unshare the screen and jump and do a different share to this. We could take a walk tonight, but I think for time's sake and mobility's sake, I'll show you on the map here. So this is Google Earth, of course. This is all our property. So you can see that a lot of this forest over here is SLC property, and parking lot, obviously. this is what's called the gathering place. That's what was built let me get a little closer. That's what was built in 2003. If you haven't ever gone over there, it's a big multi-purpose room, Sunday school rooms, youth room, all kinds of, that's really what this was built for, was give us more fellowship space. There's a small kitchen, not as big a one in our fellowship hall. And this here is a labyrinth, which is a prayer tool. A lot of people put a lot of, invest a lot in the pattern of the labyrinth or what, and we're not really into that. But it is a great way to focus yourself when you pray. And so if you've never done it, a labyrinth, you start here and you just start walking till you get to the center, and you can just make it a time of prayer for you, or just a time of quiet. And it's really interesting, it can help you center. That's why this was built. But a lot of times people, even though don't know it's there, because you don't really see it, but that is there. Some Christmas Eves, we've lit it up and, and done this type of thing. So that's the gathering place. And that's, that, like I say, was built in 2003. Our church has a small mortgage left on this. I think we're just about 2 years away from paying it off. And that payment is woven into the budget. So, I forget what the monthly payment is, but that's part of our monthly expenses. For a while it was separate. We do have a building fund, but that's mainly, we want to keep that for any major capital improvements, or, the furnace breaks, or, this type of thing. So some people give to the building fund specifically. I'll talk about that when we get to the giving side of things. But this is the preschool here, and preschool rooms, and then offices. My office is right here, Jonathan's office here, Jessica's office here, and I'll talk some more about staff in a little bit, but this is the breezeway, this is our fellowship hall that you see on Sunday morning, and of course the sanctuary. So that's the campus. Questions about the campus?
Bruce's office secretary.
Yes, Bruce's office is right here, thank you, Linda. And Bruce is our office manager. Let me just say a little bit about Bruce, just so you know. Bruce has been our office manager for many years now. He is a retired fire chief for Naval Base Kitsap, Bangor, and so he was managing a $10 million budget as the chief of, and he came and was interviewing for our little office manager job one day. They were members. But I was like, why are you here? He says, I retired, I don't need to make a lot, and I want to do something I enjoy and makes a difference. And so we are so blessed to have him. Even keel, makes my life and our staff's life really good, and Pastor Jonathan's life really good. However, it's interesting, so, and I'll just, maybe this is a good time for me to share a little about the staff. So, because of retirement stuff, and then now his age and stuff, he can only work for so many hours. So he had to cut his hours back to basically half-time. And so Kathleen Johnson, who is our communication connector, we call her, who does the Sunday morning bulletin, the Beacon. She does the e-news that you get. She does she does the website. She does a lot of the communications, and then she's also administrative support for all of our ministries. So she's taken more on, and so on Wednesdays, and then we have a volunteer on Fridays. So she's the person you will reach on Wednesdays. Bruce works Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday till about 3, like 9 to 3. So that's kind of the makeup of the way we're working that. He was like, well, maybe I should quit because I can't work, and I said no. So we'll work this out. So anyway, that's the campus. That's a little bit about our administrative staff. I can, let's see, go back here, and the other
I have
thing.
a question.
Please,
So
please.
you always say, Pastor Jonathan, is he in fact a pastor also?
Yes, he is.
So he's not just a musical?
Correct. So Jonathan and I, Pastor Jonathan and I are ordained pastors. His title is Youth and Family Ministry. And we used to have 3 pastors, Pastor Paula Burchill, and she was more of an associate, but she was 3/4 time. And she did more of the pastoral care with me, and we all shared. The way we shared the preaching is each of them would preach 1 Sunday a month, and I would preach 2. And now Jonathan and I swap out 2 and 2, except for 5 Sunday months where I do 3. So yes, he is ordained pastor, as just as I am, and so that's a great question. Justin, our music director, very gifted, amazing. He is not ordained as such, or obviously he's got his master's degree in music and all kinds of things. But so we're the only 2 officially ordained. Now, going to another staff position, you might hear something about Kim Grasmick or Holmes Grasmick, and she is what we call a pastoral care assistant. And she has gone through a certification program from our denomination, I guess you could say. But she's not a pastor. She is enrolled in seminary. She's had a lot of health issues with breathing from pneumonia she got that's really seems to have damaged her lungs, and so that's slowed down the process, but she's still hoping to get there. So she's in that spot. Yeah. So let's see, that's Kim. We have a facility manager whose name is Lisa Gregg. If you haven't met Lisa, she's a delight. If you love to work, gardens, mowing lawns, whatever, and you've got free time, she would love to have your help. But she obviously keeps the campus looking beautiful, but she also maintains the inside. We do have a custodian as well. Let's see, who am I forgetting? Forgetting somebody, I know it. Kathy Bowman. We call her our community connector. You see a theme here with all these, the word connector. She's volunteering, but that was originally going to be a paid position. She is a retired ELCA Lutheran pastor. And her passion is connecting the church to the community. So she also wrote on the church. Let me just show you this. Let me share a screen again and go to the internet, if I can find the internet. Let's see, this should work. I can do it that way and go over here to our website, and we are going to be revamping our website. It's because this is something I was going to show you later, but anyway, it's in the flow now. Under ministries here, you can see community outreach. That's something that Kathy is really involved in. God's work, our hands, and you look at all the different things that we are hosting or involved with in our congregation. So you can go down and you look at all of it. Esquire Hills, we have actually Jonathan's spouse, Jackie, and Chuck's daughter works at Esquire Hills Elementary School as a teacher. But we've really had this connection going way back, and it's the most Title I school, I guess you could say. Is that the right way to say it? Title I? Anyway, low income school in the CK school district, and we've really partnered with them in the Cottage Bay Apartments, and we do teacher appreciation events. We've done reading help events, all kinds of things there, and Kathy's really been the catalyst of these connections that we have. The other thing that Kathy did pre-COVID, see if I can see under news and events, love in action. So she went through each week for many months and highlighted one of the either ministries that we support in our community or we run, or we have members who are involved in, and look at that. You got a whole year almost of things that we have been doing. And she wrote a little article on all the ways that our congregation is connecting. So that's there. So but our website was really state of the art about 15 years ago. So we're looking at revamping it and making it more up to date with the latest. But it still has tons of great information. I put lots of my education stuff on here. Like there's the foundations class, my Bible studies, so you can access those lots of ways. The only last thing I'll say if you look here at news and events, here's your calendar beacon bulletin. So if you click on there, you can go to this upcoming Sunday's newsletter and look at it beforehand. You can look at the church bulletin, and you can, if you like, I can't find the e-news in my email that comes out on Tuesdays, you got it there. So anyway, there's a quick deal on the website. I guess the last thing I'll say, if I go to the home button, no, I guess I can't go to the home button. Here we go. Just go to the home button. Thank you. We have these sliders, but I want to mention this. So this is our short little mission statement: connecting to Christ and loving Kitsap. So that's our mission. Through word and sacrament, through the preaching, like we've talked about in this class, through worship, we're connecting to Christ. We're connecting more to Christ. We're hoping that more people in our community will be connected to Christ through our ministry. And then, having been connected to Christ, we're going to love Kitsap and the world. So that's the short mission. When I was in Ethiopia for my sabbatical many years ago now, I kind of borrowed this from them. That was their, and the year I was there, they had a goal of reaching 1 million new Christians in a year. And they now have, I think, 9 million Lutheran Christians in Ethiopia. So a lot of amazing things are happening.
Didn't you say that country had, in one of our lessons, that had the highest number of Lutherans?
I think they might be the largest in Africa, but you got Tanzania and you got Namibia that could be very close. But what I think I did say is that you put all the different Lutheran groups that are still around. Remember, I said, you had all these. Well, now that there are about 3 main ones, but there are lots of little ones. You put them all together, and they're not 9 million. So there's more Lutheran Christians in Ethiopia than in all of the United States.
I have a question.
Please.
Is that because we went over there and introduced him to it? Was it their first experience to it, or do you know the reasoning why?
I do, to some degree. In the late 1800s, there was a movement called Pietism that was going in the Lutheran churches in Europe, and it was a reaction about being too heady, just too cerebral. Like, what about a personal relationship with Christ? And these folks were just passionate to share the gospel. And they went to Africa. They went to lots of places. And the way the Lutheran church got started in Ethiopia, I can tell that story very quickly. There was a slave that Swedish missionaries purchased and freed. And I forget why they had done it for this particular person, but they did what they could, and this guy was really bright, and so they sent him back, and he got seminary trained and all of this and educated, and he came back to Ethiopia. But the church in Ethiopia at the time, one of the oldest Christian churches, the Orthodox Church in Ethiopia, is one of the oldest, that goes way back to the very beginning. But they weren't too crazy about these Protestants coming. And so they wouldn't let him back in. And by the way, when he was baptized and he became a Christian, this person that I'm talking about, and he changed his name to Onesimus, which is a runaway slave in the New Testament in Paul's letter to Philemon, the slave that, anyway, don't have time to go into that. But so he comes back and he's just passionate to share Christ, and Lutherans, as you know, are very focused on the scriptures and on the Bible, and they wouldn't let him in the country. So what he decided to do is translate the Bible into his home language, and in Ethiopia there's a bunch of tribes, into Oromo, and now the vast majority of the Oromo people are Lutheran Christians. And so they did finally let him in. He brought the scriptures and he started teaching, and off we went. So that in the period of 200 years since that happened, or actually 100 years really is what you'd say, at the end of 1800, so 1900, 2000, so yeah. That's what's happened. And anyway, so forget how we got to all of that, but connecting to Christ, this was kind of the way they talked about their mission, and I went, that sounds really smart. And then I also visited a church in Sheffield, England, and they were very similar, and I thought, wow, that just works. So that's what we're about here. So in our opening page, you've also got all these banners, and we try and put things that are coming up, etc. Now that I've got it, so I don't forget, well, somebody remind me to don't forget about the financial giving video. All right, let's stay focused here. Let's end this. Questions about the website or anything like that? Let's get back to this. All right, something that you're going to be like, wow, why did Pastor Bill tell us about this? I want you to know this congregation. And also, as you're becoming members of this church, I also want you to know what you can expect. And this is what I mean about that. And so this is why I'm talking about congregational sizes. When I became a pastor, I immediately found myself as a lead pastor. It was a really rare, weird kind of circumstance, but I showed up as associate. 9 months later, the lead pastor had to leave for not the greatest reasons, and the church was struggling. They all of a sudden couldn't afford 2 pastors, and so they said, let's just have Bill Crabtree keep going. So I said, okay. And a couple years later, they said, we're burning him out, and we're ready to get back to 2 full-time pastors, which they were. So but they called me as lead pastor at, 27, 28 years old, which was like bizarre, and I didn't feel in any way, fit for that. But anyway, I jumped in, and so I went on right away learning stuff about congregations. And one of the most interesting things I learned, and most helpful, is to look at what they call size theory of congregations. And I like to tell new members about this because it will help you make sense of where Silverdale Lutheran's at. So, here, I'll just minimize us up here. So, it's a little blurry, but this comes from a book by Alice Mann, and it's pretty old now, but I think this is still a pretty accepted thing. So she kind of came up with 4 different size congregations. Down in the bottom left there, you've got family size. Now this is, let's see if I've got numbers here. Oh, okay. I thought I had put numbers up there, but usually family-sized congregations worship 50 or less people a Sunday. And usually there's a matriarch or patriarch, and the vast majority of Protestant churches are family-sized churches. I think it's something, and the last time I checked and looked at statistics, 70 to 80% of Christians worship in churches that are 75 people a Sunday or less. A lot of small little churches around the world. Now you might not think that because of the popularity of more really large churches, they're more visible, but and that's probably changed quite a bit over the last 10, 15 years, but nonetheless, a lot of churches are family-sized churches, and the pastors usually come and go there. They're there for 3 or 4 years because pastors come and go, but it's that family, those core families, and they're very close, but they're small for a reason. Because a really close family, is there room for people to come in? They think that they're very kind and open, but boy, trying to break into that group is hard, not that you can't do it. But really what makes this church tick is those family connections and friendships and whatnot. The next size up church, which you start talking about 50 to 75 to more like 150, 200 to somebody. And that's what she called the pastoral size church. And that's because churches that size, the pastor is really everything. Your ability to, hey, pastor, what's going on? You know, direct access. If you're in the hospital, the pastor's there. And not just once, but a lot. Sometimes there's home visits, you know. I can't do home visits here. We have 900 members in this church. So, you know, now I'll get to that in a minute when it comes to pastoral care, because it's one reason as far as what you can expect of Pastor Jonathan anyway. But yeah, it's like the old time where the doctor would come do house visits, you know. Well, you know, the pastors did it then, and I was in a pastor-centered church in my last congregation. Size-wise, we were up in the program world, but it was more of a pastor, and it was really focused on the pastor, and that's what's characteristic there. So, you know, maybe it's a good sermon, but the bottom line is that pastor there for me when I need him. And that is what really makes that size tick. The next size up, program size, really Silverdale is in the multi-cell size numbers, but we're on the upper side of program. But when you look at this church, you see tons of programs, music program, you know, all churches have programs, but that's really what makes this congregation tick. The quilters, the choir, the Bible studies, the youth program, the children's program, and that is really good, and that's really cool. And then as you go up in size, the expectations of quality of music, quality of everything goes up. The multi-cell size church is what we typically talk about. It's really mega church is probably a whole nother one, but these are the larger churches that have really wonderful, really high quality music, really experience. You know, it's these days it's full on media and everything. And then they are usually a church of small groups. Not Silverdale Lutheran has small groups, and I'm going to talk about that tonight, but we are a church with small groups. So like I won't mention names, but in some of the churches, if you went, some churches, we didn't talk about the nonprofit things, so many things that come flooding in. Anyway, just stay focused, Bill. Okay. If you showed up to church, they wouldn't care about you being a member. In fact, there are board-owned nonprofits and member-owned nonprofits. Some churches are board-owned nonprofits. So you have a board of directors or elders, whatever you want to call it, but you don't have members. You're just, and a lot of the younger generation are like, member? Why do I want to be a member? I'm a member of Safeway or whatever, you know. Why do I? But if you went to these churches and you started worshiping, you would be like, what small group are you joining? You know, like, let's go. We're going to pull, and this is the way they work. This is the way, and so a lot of people get worried about a multi-site church. Oh, it's so big, it's so impersonal. No, because every person in there, supposedly, is got a small group that they're connected to. And then you got this amazing experience on Sunday and these small groups. That's kind of the model. Now, one thing I want to say about this is, okay, so what can you expect if Silverdale is over here? What can you expect of the pastors? You can call us and we are there. We are not so big. Now, if you're way up here, you might be able to call the pastor of pastoral care, or, you know, but getting to the lead pastor or something is not an expectation you would have. You might have to call a deacon or an elder or somebody like that. But we are not so big that we can't be. I would never want you to say, oh, I can't talk to Pastor Will. I can moderate my workload, and if you need to call us, you can. But I'm not gonna know when you haven't been in church for 3 weeks. Probably. Now, I might know. Debbie, like, I'm gonna know, no, because she sits right behind me. No. And, yes, so, but, you know, so that you see the difference there? Now, in a small pastoral sized church, yeah, you could expect, you know, I haven't been in church in a month, the pastor didn't call me. Like, how come? You know, and people get disconnected with their church because of things like this. And so I want you to think about the expectations. We absolutely want you to call us if you are in need. And if we don't have the capacity to be there for you, we will help find that support for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So I can say that if SLC is there, our vision is to keep growing. And so we are working on small groups. I can tell you about those in a little bit. The hardest places to pastor is when you're moving a family-sized church to pastoral size. This is where pastors burn out the most, because they're trying to get this little family-sized church to grow, and the family-sized church is looking at them like. Or you're a pastoral size and you start to move here. This is where pastors get caught. Why? Oh, I got to do all these programs, and I also got to take care of everybody. This is the biggest burnout place for pastors. I have less pastoral demands on my congregation. So we, before COVID, were $375 a Sunday between both services. My church in Lodi was $250 when I left. But I have less pastoral care expectations here than I did there, even though it's twice the size. So anyway, but it also, like, it isn't just about the pastor. It's like, what are you looking for in a church? Where, you know, so this, I just find this is so helpful for me as a pastor, but I think it's helpful for you. As you think about, you know, your future in the church and what you're hoping for. However, let me finish this little part of the night by saying what I've already told y'all many times. I hope the reason you come here is to hear the word and receive the sacrament. And to the liturgy and have it pour over you and you invest in that. And yes, I hope you can come to a Bible study if you can. And again, everybody's different. There isn't one way, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I hope that's why you come. But this affects all of that. Okay, questions about that, comments?
What about demographics?
Yes.
And the thing I'm wondering is, because Valerie and I, as well as many of, or some of you, are older.
Yes.
And I look around and I'm thinking, and I typically, we've only gone to the 11 o'clock service once, and we normally go to the 8:30. And I look around and I see a lot of gray heads.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, where are the young people? And then, and I'm thinking there must be somewhere. And but I'm thinking, okay, part of my wheels start turning is how, because I'm coming to this church and I'm looking at investing. I'm not a young person. I've never worked in Sunday school.
Right.
So I'm not that person, but I'm thinking, how does this church attract young people? You said it's countercultural.
Yes.
And so
how do you bridge that?
How do you do that?
No, that's a great question, Paul. I really appreciate that question. And it also helps me tell a little bit of the history too of the church. One, yes, for the way the current flow of things is, and this hasn't always been that way, but it's been changing over the last 10 years. The 11 o'clock service is where our families go. You know, like last Sunday we had 12 kids up for the children's sermon versus 2, the one family that always comes to early, the 2 girls. So that's been an interesting thing. So they're there, but also I think what we're experiencing personally is a lot of our younger there's just so many other demands on their time, and so they're out there. We have actually the median, not the average, but the median age is, believe it or not, like right around 50 in the late 40s when you look at it. So not obviously the average is going to be skewed one way or the other, but the median. So they're out there. But here's, I think, partly where you're getting, how do you make that connection to younger families? And we struggle with that because of our form of worship. Like we talked about in our worship class, it's countercultural. So, I mean, there's even not just the youth, but the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, the 40-year-olds who have teenagers. It's just so hard for me to get it in their heads that, you know, that you need to come and let the liturgy work you over and work on you and receive the sacrament and hear the word, because they're looking for the entertainment thing. And so I think it's even harder as our culture goes even more full bore that way. It's harder for us. I think that's a part of it. It's also a part of just the demographics, like all the school districts are down in enrollment, and our areas is getting older as well. We've had lots of this. Maybe my kids are 30. When my daughter went to the National Youth Gathering, there were 30 youth who went. You know, so, and yeah, that's down. And our servant trip this year is like 15 kids. So, you know, so we have experienced that. Yeah.
What I have found interesting, because we have two teenage kids, is I did not realize they have told me that there's like one set of kids that go to Sunday school, another set of kids that come to youth group. There's another set of kids that are going on the servant project. And then I know there's like a whole nother set of kids that come to worship, but don't seem to necessarily be on the other ones. And so it's like,
It's something we're talking a lot about right now, just the way things have filtered out. Wednesday's almost become an outreach. And we got kids who are coming from some really challenged situations, and they've come with another friend, and maybe a quarter to even less are actively worshiping on Sunday. Now they're probably connected officially, but then maybe another third of the folks that are coming on Wednesday aren't connected at all. So there is that group. And then there's kind of a Sunday school group that comes on Sunday mornings to Sunday school. And then there's a number of families that their kids are in worship every Sunday, but they don't come on Wednesdays and they don't go to Sunday school. But they're going to the servant trip. Some of them. Yeah. So it's just really interesting. And I think it's a part of like, wow, we just live in this crazy, complicated world. And so in one sense, it's a great thing, but we're talking about how we can bridge. And a part of it too is, man, you know, kids are very tribal, and like, I'm in this group and you're in that group. And so we're really talking about how do we bridge this? Like, how do we get these kids who are starting to participate on Wednesday into Word and Sacrament? You know, but a part of it's just, you got to teach about what we're doing. It's a countercultural experience, but
maybe it's not all about playing dodgeball on Wednesdays.
Correct. Yeah, because if you don't play dodgeball on Wednesdays, they don't want to come.
I know.
So you got to do some of that, but then you got to take them deeper. So, but it is definitely a challenge, Paul, and we're looking at that. And
one of the things that I was thinking of is, you talked about, another fellow, another pastor told me about his experience at Cambridge, but there was, at the UW, when I was going there, and even to this day, at St. Mark's Cathedral, you know, I think it's Friday night.
It's their comp line.
They have this big thing where, you know, lots of young people come and they listen to Gregorian chants, and the organ plays, and it's really a huge organ. And I'm thinking they're all into this, and I'm thinking, you know, it's not that far a leap to a liturgical church,
right,
because the thing that they're in is a counterculture,
absolutely.
and yet they enjoy it, and I'm thinking, wouldn't they enjoy this too? Because it's, we think it's wonderful, the worship service here.
Right. I appreciate that, and yeah, please, Jason.
What's New Life considered?
So New Life
kind of
is
church is
definitely up in the multi-cell side.
No, I mean, what kind of church is that considered?
They are independent, so
Right.
they are, but I think they would be more coming out of the Pentecostal. I think the Pastor West was Foursquare. He was pastor at the church big church in Paulsville. Yeah, I forget it used to be Christ Memorial, but they changed it.
That's a rock and roll church.
Oh, yeah.
I've been there a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
They got all kinds of young folks there.
Oh, yeah, they do, yeah. And that's kind of what we were talking about with this worship thing, like, if you, what naturally appeals to our culture and to young people is the rock and roll, the big time band. They took over a movie theater, so, and you've got this big screen, and you do the multimedia, and we do just a little bit, but, and so then you go, wow.
So is that bad though?
Is it bad?
I kind of did, I'm rock and roll anyway.
Yeah, right. It's not, I certainly wouldn't say it's bad. I think they're missing something that I don't want to let go. And for us to do that, we would have to kind of let go of a little bit of who we are. And we had that, we've had that conversation when we talked about worship. So it's not necessarily bad, but there are things I'd be concerned about, like worship isn't entertainment. I can tell you that I've asked young people back when I was working with youth, and New Life was really just on fire. I think it was before they moved their current location. So why do you go to New Life? Well, they have the best band in the county.
No, they have a giant carnival.
And they have a giant carnival. I had one of our families
they have it
say,
next to us where I work, kids have podiatry. It's a mess when they do it.
Right, and the giant carnival. One of our families who left and went to New Life said, well, I don't have to make my kid go to church anymore, because when they get there, they go off into a Disneyland experience. I mean, in essence, it's not saying it's not Christian based, but it's just, all this
No,
fluff
but
and
we
stuff.
had problems with it when they had it last year, because these kids are just running all over everywhere.
Yeah,
Knocking
well, I
on
know.
doors. and-
But look what who they're reaching, and look what they're doing. So I don't disparage, but I have concerns about that. I think worship as entertainment is problematic, but I also know it works. And maybe
How long have they been around in Silverdale?
quite a long time.
Have they been at that building for a
No,
while though?
that's more new. They were at Clahowie. Yeah,
That's when I went. I only went a couple times,
yeah.
but
They hand out earplugs at every worship service. I have friends that, not friends, I have people that are actually starting to come this way from New Life, who I kind of knew from other angles, say they stopped going, except for when Wes preaches. They love his preaching, and they would just skip the music because it was too loud, even with the earplugs. So, and we get in trouble when we, Anyway, great question, great conversation. It's really helpful. Please.
I think the other thing is, and I don't know what the answer is to it. I'll remember my being brought up, you go to the church and you confirmed and everything. There's an age in high school, you graduate.
Yeah.
And from graduation to, let's say, 27, you're trying to figure out what you want, where you're going, you have all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
And nothing's seeping in, nothing's catching them.
Yeah.
It happened to me, I just pulled away. I stopped because I was doing other stuff.
Right.
So there's something missing that would click.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is.
Everybody's asking this. I mean, certainly, it's something I think about all the time. And then also at the end of the day, Jason,
okay, you said worship's not supposed to be entertainment. I'm not sure I get that.
Who's the,
why is that
when you go to
okay?
Why is that not okay? Because it's worshiping God, and it's not us that's the focus, it's God that's the focus. And so it shouldn't matter the focus should be us praising God and us hearing from God, and it isn't like how it makes me feel or manufacturing a certain experience for me because the music was all. I'm not saying being engaged in worship, but I think there's a difference. I don't know where the line is, Jason, between when it becomes entertainment, because I would never say that people that go to New Life, for instance, are just being entertained. They're not worshiping. No, I've been there. They're worshiping. Now here's maybe one of the lines that gets crossed for me. And this probably has happened here a few times, I suppose. But when the music's so loud that it doesn't matter if we're singing or participating, then it's entertainment. I'm going to a concert, which is cool. And it's Christian music and it may edify me. But to me, that's a line that starts to get crossed.
And you're not saying it's wrong to be entertained by what might be going on. You're just saying that's not the purpose.
That's not the focus. Thank you. It's not the focus. Yes, because I certainly want you to be engaged, but also remember what I said, in our kind of worship, if you've got to bring a work mindset, if you sit down and just wait to be entertained, you're going to miss it, right? You got to participate, you got to read, you got to focus, respond, So yeah, great question. I wish we could just spend hours talking about this. Let me just knock out some quick communications. We've got the website I showed you. Does everybody get the Tuesday e-news at this point? If you do not, send Bruce an email, slc@silverdalelutheran.org. Say, I don't get the e-news. Please put me on. Now, you may have one household email. If you want both emails to get it, that's where you need to call them. We do a Friday email with the worship info. We got group emails. Believe it or not, our little system can make robocalls. So once in a while, once in a while we might say, hey, everybody, we're doing this. Come on down. And it'll leave it on your voicemail or your phone, cell phone, or your home phone, whatever we have. But we don't do that very often. In my prior congregation, we had this system, and that was pretty avant-garde back then. And we'd do a phone call every Saturday, people loved it. Oh, this is who's singing and this is who's that, and it'd be like 30 seconds. And this is what the text is for, and that was back when people actually answered their phones, And they loved it. But then it got to be the point where, because it was always, hi, this is Pastor Bill, and this is Sunday morning. I'd call people and I have to say, this is really Pastor Bill now. I'd have to really, So anyway, we don't do that many robocalls. Text messages, you can sign up to receive that. We have our church YouTube channel. I also have a channel separate. It's called PB. I don't know if you want to write it down, but it's PB'(S) teaching. If you put PBS, you're going to go to the public broadcasting station. But PB'(S) teaching, and I've got all the old class. They're not the greatest videos, but there's quite a lot of content there. But all of our worship services, and I think Kathleen uploads stuff from my channel onto the church channel too. So all of our worship services are on there, lots of events. Don't forget that. The app. How many of you have the app on your phone? Okay. If you have a smartphone, if you don't, that's fine. And I got to figure out a way to put this up on the screen, but it's this little button right here. I open it up and I see all these buttons like welcome visitor information, e-news, middle camp, men's retreat, sign up, giving. The giving video is here on the bottom on how to give electronically. The connect card is there. If you want to use that, if you want to connect with us and say, Pastor Bill, I need this or that, what's going on, or why did we do that, or whatever. The links to the live stream are usually always on the top left. So anyway, lots of good stuff on the app. Don't forget about that. Yes, please.
So when I watch a service at home and I want to do the giving, I have trouble finding it sometimes. I mean,
Okay.
I've done it, and then it's like, okay, where did I go to get it?
Yep.
And so I struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah. You say you have the app?
I do have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the app, the one thing that's probably the reason is in the app, on the very bottom are like 5 different,
Yes.
and there's, the bottom right is give.
Oh,
So that'll take you there. So if you open the app, and then it might, the first time you do it, it might, you might have to put in some information, but it takes me about, 30 seconds to do it. But that is the spot. We also, for in-person, are gonna be putting we don't put the QR code up long enough, but you can always press pause on your computer, on your TV or whatever, for the QR code. The way, does that work?
oh, no.
In the bottom of the,
It says giving.
it says give. It's just in the bottom, it's the 4th one over on the right.
Very bottom.
On the very bottom.
I have connect.
Yeah, it's
No, it's on the
it's
bottom.
those little guys on the bottom. Yeah, it's hard to see. There you go. No, perfect. Great question. Thanks for asking it, because other people, I'm sure, were struggling with that. It's just, you don't see it. It's just hidden. I know, I need to talk to
Thank you very much.
Subsplash, the company that we use, and say,
Okay.
those are, there's the home button. And by the way, since we're talking about the app, if you want to get really precise, there's under the home button, there's a spot where you can do settings, and if you want to receive notifications, you can turn those on your iPhone. And like, I get notifications when we're gonna go live stream something, so there's all of that too. All right, all that fancy stuff. Let's do how you become a member. And I was gonna get the hymnals out and I forgot, but I think I'll just tell you about it. So on the 21st at the late service, this will all be printed out for you in the bulletin. So it'll also be on the screen behind me, and if you're facing the congregation, up in the back. But the way it will start is our president will introduce you as either transferring or joining by affirmation of faith. And so he will read your name, and then there'll be an opening, a little prayer, and this usually happens right after the sermon. And so you'll all come up together in front.
All of us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are our kids supposed to come too?
Yes, please. And Art and Ginger, have the girls come up with you. Absolutely. So you come up and you stand up in front, and you'll be, like I say, introduced by the president, and also, by the way, our council will be approving you as an official member, as I share with them that you went through the class and all of that. Hey, somebody remind me to go back to the member-owned 501c3 thing.
Okay.
But so just somehow somebody remind me at some point, but I'm gonna stick with this. So then there's the opening prayer, there's some scriptures, and what we will do is very similar to a baptism, because you're affirming your baptism. So you'll reject sin, death, and the devil. You will confess your faith in the words of the Apostles' Creed. And then there's a little thing where you say, will you worship here? Will you be faithful in serving Christ? Will you strive for justice and peace in the world? And will you share the gospel? There's a little list of stuff. And then you will say yes with the help of God. Because you can't do any of that. If I were you, I'd run at that point. Because I'm like, I'm out of here. Because you can't do that. You can't do all the list. But with God's help, you can. And this is where I usually tell this fun little story from when I was in 7th grade. So in 7th grade, my mom and dad would not allow me to play tackle football. I ended up playing football in high school. It was a lot of fun. But at that time, we'd play flag football, which has now become a big thing again. And we had our teacher, our coach was Mr. Howard. And Mr. Howard was a passionate guy. I just remembered that, and just really, he was a good coach. So the first game we played, we just won like 42-0, and everybody was excited. And Mr. Howard was maybe a little over enthusiastic and excited, and we were all in the huddle after, all down. He says, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go this whole season undefeated. This team is that good. You're that good. You can do it. We're gonna go undefeated. And then everybody's like, yeah. And then he said, and you're gonna go unscored upon the whole year too.
Oh.
And it was hush. Like, oh, yeah, sure. Second game comes along. I don't know how many points we scored, but we won and the other team didn't. Unscored upon. Yeah, we're starting to believe in this. Like, whoa. Third game, once again, blew them out. They didn't score. Total thing. Fourth game, there were 6 schools in our elementary school thing. Unscored upon, won easily. Fifth game, for some reason I remember it was close, but they didn't score and we scored a couple touchdowns. Sixth game, because I think it just so happened that the other team was undefeated too. But, and so it turns out that was gonna kind of be the championship game. Well, we're doing great. It's, we're like 3 touchdowns ahead. It's going good, and man, we got it. And the last minute of the game, their running back breaks through and runs for a touchdown. We won the game. It's over, and our whole team is walking off the field. We won the championship, and the other team's looking at us like, what is your problem? You're the champions. And I learned at that point, man, it's something when you shoot for a high goal. But of course we're gonna miss it. And that's when you say yes with the help of God, that's what you're saying. We're gonna go for it. But we're sainted sinners, as we talked about. And of course we're not going to do that perfectly. Of course we're going to fall. We're going to misstep. God's grip on you isn't going to change. Jonathan loves to do this. This is baptism. This is the gospel. And then this is what we do. And affirmation of baptism is that. Your yes to God's grip in your life. And I like that. As long as we understand that this, God's going to be faithful. God's sure and dependable. Sometimes we're hanging on with one finger, but He's going to take hold. So that's what you're committing. And so to become a member of this church, that is how we do it. Again, and those who are transferring, I encourage you to come up and affirm your faith anyway, but you don't have to. It's totally up to you. We will recognize you whether you're up affirming your faith or not. But we, in one sense, we affirm our faith all the time, right? Because we have the creed every Sunday. But there's this little additional, like, will you commit to worshiping and receiving the Lord's Supper and hearing the word and sharing the gospel and serving people and this type of thing. Questions? Comments? Good over there? All right. So go for it. Go for it, but know you've got God's grace no matter what. Okay, back to some details. Oh, let's do the member thing. So remember I said there's nonprofits that are board-owned and member-owned. Most churches are probably member-owned 501c3s, nonprofits. Some of the, I don't know what PBF is. New Life, I'm very confident, is a board-owned, nonprofit. So they have a board, the pastor is accountable to that board, but there isn't like this big, they don't have membership there, which actually is another plus for younger people, because a lot of younger people don't want to be members. You know, don't lock me down that way. But this church is a member-owned 501c3. That means when you become a member, you have a vote. Our congregation meets once a year. It can meet more often as need be. And we approve a budget, which includes the compensations for staff, includes how much we're going to spend on Sunday school and how much we spend on insurance for this sanctuary, how much we're going to put into upkeep, and how much we're going to, you know, the whole gamut. So you approve that. You become a voting member of this congregation when you become a member. That's why the council has to officially approve you. And so, yeah, anybody in that meeting could like stand up and say, I move to take, you know, $10,000 out of Pastor Bill's compensation and put it to outreach or whatever. It's fine. If it gets a second, then they debate it. We follow the Robert's Rules of Orders in our congregational meetings. You know, now most of the time, because the council spends, you know, sometimes weeks on the budget, the congregation has a high degree of trust in what's presented, and they rarely will do something like that. But it could be, I just use that as an example. Don't recommend that I get paid, I'm just kidding. But you have that authority as a member of this church. You, in essence, own this congregation. Of course, it's God's, it's in Christ, it's not ours. But you are now in that regard. Yes, Jason?
So we vote on what you make?
You do.
That's a
That's a bite? Yeah. So, but let me explain more. So our synod, I want to go and write on the whiteboard, but I can't mess that up. This is a perfect chance for me to tell you the organization of this Lutheran church, a congregation in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. You have congregations, and then a bunch of congregations are in a group, and they call that a synod. It's so confusing because there's a national church called the Missouri Synod. But our synod use of the term, which synod I think means walking together or something like that. So we're in the Southwest Washington Synod, which basically go down to Tacoma and cut a line and then go all the way up to the northern part. It's really, I don't know why they don't call it Western Washington Synod, but they call it Southwest Washington Synod, even though our synod goes all the way up to Forks. So that's our grouping of congregations. There's 80 congregations in that area. And then there's a national, church-wide, they call it, expression of the church. Well, our synod gives guidelines to congregations on what pastors should be paid. And they basically go by teachers' salaries, pretty much. And then, you know, there's a step increase for years of experience, and they're different in each synod because, of course, economies are different and cost of living is different in each part of the country. And so there is a guide. But yes, a lot of congregations in our synod, we are one of the 4 or 5, I would say, thriving congregations in our synod. Most are small, remember the chart? And they can't pay their pastor the guidelines. They can't afford it.
Is that a reason why pastors move? Or?
Sometimes it might be that.
See, that's not cool.
No, it isn't, and but that's unfortunately that's where I have to say that the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, of which we are part, and along with most what they used to call mainline denominations. By the way, they call that mainline because they were always, you'd have the Methodists and the Lutheran and the Presbyterian and on the main line of the little town, you know, and so somehow they got the name mainline. But those denominations are, you know,
Going down.
they're going down. The ELCA started with 5.2 million members when it merged from 3 different churches back in 1988, 5.2 or 3 million, and now we're about 3 million.
Well, I heard a bunch of that's because they're embracing some of this woke nonsense.
Well, that could be a part of it. It could be a part of it, and it's okay, I know, you're saying your thoughts. It's a part of it, and depending on one's opinion about those things, yes, our church-wide expression is much more progressive than this congregation. There's no doubt about that, but that's true of Presbyterians, Methodists, all of that. But I don't think we can say it's just that. I think like what we were talking about, worship is a part of it. It's very complex, let me tell you. A lot of people are trying to figure this out. But in our synod, you know, we're one of the 4 or 5, you know, thriving congregations. There's some others that are about the same size. So, but anyway, so a lot of churches can't afford to pay. We are very blessed here that the church has always said, we're gonna get the pastors the meet the guidelines, so.
And you've been here for how long?
It'll be 16 in June, starting my 17th year.
Like,
Yeah.
no plans, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have any plans to leave. That brings up how does a pastor come to a church? In our way of going, pastors fill out what they call their mobility paperwork. And all pastors are supposed to have filed that, because you're supposed to be available by the Holy Spirit's leading. I don't have mine submitted, so just so you know, so I'm not out there. But when I came up here, I was like, you know, I think I've done 17 years in my prior church, and I think I've done what I can do there. And so my kids were getting close to junior high school. We didn't want to move the kids during that time, so we said, if we're gonna go, and there were lots of other circumstances, but so I put my paperwork out, and the assistant to the bishop. So we have a bishop of each synod that's elected by the congregational representatives. So I'm probably telling you stuff you don't want to or need to know, but nonetheless, there's an assistant to the bishop, a hierarchy, if you will, or an organizational structure. And his job was to look at the needs of a congregation and look at the pastors that are available and put the two together. And so I was recommended here along with 3 other pastors. And then you interview. There's a call committee that represents this congregation. And they sat, and we met in this room right here, and we talked. And we said, is this a good fit? You know, is this? Yeah. And so that's the process. And then, so I took that call. That was the same for Pastor Jonathan. And that's the way our system kind of structure works. We elect voting members that once a year go to the synod convention. Actually, now it's every 2 years. And they elect people, a handful of people that go to the national one. And then they kind of represent the synod and vote on things.
Is my dad one of those?
He went, that's what he went to last weekend. Yep.
I got a question for you.
Please.
So when you don't have an answer and you need somebody to go to, who do you go to?
Yeah.
Besides the big guy.
Yeah. In the past, yeah, that's right. I go to the good Lord like you guys do all the time, but I have colleagues that I really respect and trust, including Jonathan, and then I have some other pastors that I go to. I mean, I have respect for our current bishop, but he's...
Is that like our version of a pope?
No, it's...
The leader or whatever?
Yeah, so Lutherans don't have a worldwide leader like the Catholics do.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the Pope for the Catholics. But we have a national bishop who's kind of, but doesn't have the power that the Pope has.
Right,
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah, but in essence, I know where you're going, but the structure, it's kind of like that. But like in the Catholic Church, they have bishops of dioceses, they call them, or their areas. Well, we have that too.
But ours only oversees the US, and then
Correct.
Europe obviously has theirs.
Each country has their own.
Yeah,
They have their own leaders. Yeah, absolutely. So that's just some fun stuff, isn't that fun? on organization. But I will remember, I think we talked about this. We are congregational ultimately. You know, so when I became a pastor, I had to have 3 things. I had to have a master's in divinity, so I went to school for 4 years after I went to 4 years of college. So, And one of those years, those an internship. So I had 3 years of school and 1 year of internship. We've had to be very flexible now in the last 20 years with how that happens, but in essence, it's still in place, but just happens differently. So I had to have that. I had to have a Master's in Divinity. But then there was another group that was called my candidacy committee, and they looked at me like, Bill Crabtree, are you fit to be a pastor? You know, like, are you mature enough? Do you have a relationship with God in Christ? And, you know, do you, ethically, are you in the right boat? And, you know, all of this, they looked at me, and so they got to sign off. So the seminary that gives me a Master's in Divinity says, yeah, we think Bill Crabtree's okay. And the candidacy committee says to the church, and they kind of represent the ELs, the National Lutheran Church, the whole church, and they say he's okay, but I'm still not a pastor. I'm not a pastor till I get a call from a local congregation, because our church is congregationally focused. We believe that my power to preach and administer the sacraments does not come from the bishop. It comes from the gathered community saying, we want Pastor Jonathan and Pastor Bill to administer the sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper and preach the word and teach the faith here. That's where the power ultimately comes. So guess what? If I were to resign here and just hang out for 3 years, I still got the MDiv, but I lose my certification. I'd have to get recertified. I would not be a pastor in 3 years if I didn't have a call. Now that doesn't apply to they make a loophole for retired clergy. They get to stay. But if I'm not retired and I stop serving a church for whatever reason and I don't get a new call in 3 years, I have to go through a whole process because it's the local congregation. So that's where it is. Even though it actually looks a little bit like some of the other churches, like the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, we're very different in that way. The power, the authority, I should say, power might not be, to do what I do comes from you. This congregation, in a congregational meeting, all the members gathered and they said yes to what the call committee recommended. Yeah.
And there, people are talking about it, like they probably wouldn't do it that way.
They do not. That board would look for the pastor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so there's a little bit on governance and all of that. I want to bring this to a quick, more on giving. So there is this wonderful, wonderful tutorial. It's on here. It's on our website on how to use our electronic giving methods. But in your packet, right here, are envelopes. If you want to go old school, you put your cash or your check in here, and when you're in worship, you put it in the plate. We didn't give you a ton of these because not everybody uses them. You can ask for as many of these as you like. Some people give every week, some people give once a month. The good thing about this is it has a number on it. Now, if you don't have the number, it's fine. But we have a financial secretary who enters your giving into our records so that you get a quarterly report, half year report, third quarter, and then end of the year report for the IRS if you're claiming, that as a deduction. We have to do that, and you probably know a canceled check doesn't, you gotta have from the organization. But know this, that it's the policy of this congregation that the pastor does not know what people give. I do not know, I do not see that. I might ask if you haven't shown up for a year and I wonder how they're doing, and I might say to Bruce, who's actually also his volunteer as a member, he's the financial secretary, I say, has there been any offering from this folks, because I'm trying to pastorally care, I'm trying to assess where things are at. But I don't know how much anybody gives. That's the policy of this church, and there's pluses and minuses to that. The only people that know who might be able to discern that would be the people who count. We have 2 people, we have a system where checks and balances and all of that, who count the offerings every week. A third, I would say third to half of our offerings are electronic now, or EFT. And I encourage that. I like to do it because I want to give. Remember how in the video that you saw first fruits giving? I don't want to think about it. I don't want to go, I know it's been a tough month and we had this big expense. I don't want to be tempted to say, you know, whatever you've committed to giving. So in the app, you can have a recurring gift, and that's the way I do it. But then what I like to do, because what I really don't like about this is the act of giving in the offering plate is powerful. It's beautiful. I mean, in one sense, like, this is the most exciting moment of all. I can, you know, and that giving is to be reflective of your whole life, giving your whole life to Christ. So some people will take a $5 bill and put it in there, you know, just even though they're giving this way, they'll give a little extra or something that way. There are some people who actually take these and they just write EFT on it, that they want to put something in. That's fine too. Our counters know that sometimes you're gonna get an empty envelope, but put EFT or something on it so they don't, like, did something fall out or something. So that's the way we do the giving thing. And that's why we give you some envelopes. You'll see on here restricted. Remember we talked about, I think we talked about this when we talked about last week ethics and how this congregation has negotiated the whole human sexuality thing and gay marriage and all of that, and how we said we're not going to do that, but we're also going to stay in the ELCA and all of this. We went through that. The recordings on the YouTube there if you weren't here. But in order to be, for some people to be a part of this congregation, they just couldn't support our national church. And so this restricted thing is, you know, you can say, I don't want any of my contributions to be passed up. I think I told you this last week, we try and tithe. Now, I'm not saying you have to tithe. We didn't, you know, go back to my giving video on that. But we try as a congregation to tithe, and 7.5% of everything that's given to us goes to our wider expression. The other 2.5 goes to local benevolences or other benevolences that we do. But some people just think they just can't in their conscience support that. And so they restrict their giving, and that's there. There's a form if you want to do that you fill out for Bruce in the office. That's a personal thing. If you want to talk to me more about it, because we're kind of almost out of time, you can do so. But I want to explain, this is why that's there. Let me explain the other things. This needs updated severely, but this is a list of all our ministries. This is a cool thing that a group got together. It's one of these, you know, if you're struggling with anger, here's a Bible verse. But what I like about ours, it has an empathy and encouragement. Encouragement more is here's some law, and empathy is like just grace and support like that. Because a lot of times these types of things, like if you're going through depression, you know, it's more like, well, do this. and this group did a nice job with that. So that's there. We've got, that's just what we're doing tonight. You do have the spiritual gift inventory there in yours. Yeah, cool. This is just a new directory, and it's kind of a picture directory if we have a picture on file. And that always gives me a chance to remind you that your next task, we used to, like on New Member Sunday, have someone there taking your picture. This is a new world. Send us a picture. Take a selfie, whatever you want to do. You'll see we have a picture board up there. We try and keep that up to date, and people look at that all the time. Like they might see you on Sunday and say, oh, where's that person? And they'll sit there and look to find you to get your name. So if you are not like, I don't want my picture. This, by the way, is not online, this picture directory. Because for private reasons, and we had it on there for a while with a password, and somebody broke into that right away. So that is not there. But we'd love to get a picture. Some of these pictures are very old, but nonetheless, we'd love to get a picture. So there's a picture directory and a phone directory. Most important thing for me to tell you tonight that we really need is this piece of information. So this is your household information. It's in your folder, and If I would have finished 10 minutes early, I'd have you stay. You can feel free to stay if you want and fill this out, because I know when people take stuff home, sometimes it doesn't come back. But this is household information. We've obviously got your email, cell phone, confirmation date. You know, we know what that is now, but your baptism date, if you know it, we'd love to have that in there. Your birthday, we put birthdays in our monthly thing, anniversaries, this type of stuff is on here. The person that runs our security for our computer system, runs it for Keyport, so it's very good. So I want you to know you can feel very safe with that, somebody using their gifts to support their church. Enjoy the other things that are there in your little packet. My parting thing to you is this is not the end of your journey, right? This is just the beginning. Everybody's in different places. We don't really have time for too many other questions, but I want to encourage you, as the Lord leads you, to think about the forming of relationships here. Now, this is where things always go wrong, because there's a spot where Jesus said, you know, those who have ears to hear, let them hear. I don't know exactly what he meant with that, but maybe if the shoe fits, wear it. So it's kind of like, you know, I can't tell one person this is what you should do next in this church. Maybe you just need a break and I just want to worship, and maybe you're ready to plug in. Well, we have small groups. We have all kinds of things. So this is where I want to have an ongoing conversation with you. Okay, we have these women's groups. We have these. Okay, you want to be in a small group that studies the scriptures and supports each other and prays for each other. We got that. I can make some recommendations for you about that. If you're feeling like, you know, I'm worshiping most Sundays and this is just right for me right now, great. Like Marge over here is plugging in online and, you know, which is so great. That's great too. So I'm not legislating anything, but I want you to think about the importance of forming relationships, getting to know people. That, you know, some of you have come in because you've got, an already established relationship with someone, which is cool, but how can you expand that a little bit? These are things I want you to think about, but one size does not fit all. But that's something I want to mention to you. There's probably a million things I've forgotten to tell you tonight. Are there any questions? Like I say, we're a few minutes over, but yeah, please,
Becky. You
Becky.
said pictures, so there's pictures in the hallway of everybody in the congregation?
We try.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I think that's the hard thing, because I don't, of course, when you meet somebody, you don't remember their names.
Yes.
So that'll be nice then.
Name tags.
Name tags.
Oh, yeah.
Good point.
How many of you have name tags already? Okay, cool. That means I can just tell Bruce and Kathleen to put in an order, and you'll get.
Oh, okay.
It's a magnetic name tag, and I always have to hound the congregation to wear theirs.
I've seen some.
Because some wear them,
Okay.
but I will order you a name tag.
Nice.
We will get you a name tag, and that way you've got that. And I encourage you to wear it. It'll help other people get to know you, and it'll also remind them to put theirs on. But if you could, the way you get a picture in, you can attach it to an email. If you don't know how to do that, if you know how to take a picture of a selfie, that actually works really good, actually, because it's mainly your face. You can call Bruce up and say, can you give me your cell phone, and I'll text it to you. We'll probably call you and ask for a picture if we don't get one. So please send us a picture of you and fill those things out and get them to me is ASAP, yeah.
I have a question about pictures.
Yes.
We both had individual pictures. Should this be a together picture?
And for households, I think together is good. Yeah, households together. Do you have an actual together? It's fine now. Yeah. Hey, if you're good with it, it's fine.
He was wearing a tie without a shirt. So I had a t-shirt,
Oh,
but I had a tie.
yeah, that's right.
That's one of my favorite.
I love it. Even if you don't send it, I'd still like to see it. Any other questions? Again, I should probably make this a 2-hour event, but we gotta, please.
I've been a prayer administrator at our previous church, and I know that, I mean, I'm focused on the list that you print every Sunday for the
Yes.
concerns. Is there a ministry that goes on that we're notified of prayers,
Right.
needs?
There is not a separate ministry, but there is an email group that we send out sometimes it's usually daily, where people say, could you put me on the prayer list? And then that goes out to people's emails who are to be praying for them.
So I could be on the group.
You could. So if you're not on the email, that's another thing. I don't know if that's in your deal, but you could write it on your little sheet. Please put me on the email prayer list.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Let me close this with a prayer. Gracious God, there's so much we could talk about, but thank you for this little time together, and thank you that you've brought each person's journeys here, and I pray that so much that SLC will bring them the good news into their ears, that they'll keep believing and trusting in Christ Jesus our Lord. Lord, we do just place each person's future journey in your hands and know that you're using SLC as a place to nurture faith and life. So we place each person here in your care. And I thank you so much for this time together, and I look forward to more. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Last thing I will say this, that as April was here, even though she was moved away, you can join this class anytime. I do it twice a year at least. I've already got a group close to this size, and we might already start pretty quick. So you can always retool. You can always come back, because you want to hear that lecture that Pastor Bill did. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, well.
Boy, that was quick. Perfect. Yeah, if you have time to fill out, if not, it's not a worry at all. Thank you, Marge, for being here in person.
I appreciate being here because I don't make it in, as you know,
Right, I know.
very often, but I am very thankful for virtual.
Yeah, I'm so glad that's working for you. Yeah, that's just lovely. Yeah. You're on the chair. Confirmation, 11 o'clock, the 21st, late service. Yes, that's very important. 11 o'clock, the 21st. Yes.
Yeah, let's go.
That.
So it's 1960.
That's fine.
It was here. That was here.
That's fine. That's fine.
To search,
So
see if they still have it.
they might still keep it. But we'll probably just put down, yeah, we'll probably just put down, something for 1960s for your. We don't have to. But, and maybe Bruce will call them up and say, hey, you guys have them. But you could do that as well if you wanted to see. Yeah. Yeah. For your patient.
My own excited. I know, I kind of see that, but it's the formality, I guess,
Yeah.
I didn't mean that they were church.
We'll see. That's fine, yeah. You're the one. That's it. But they're. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. they're out of the household, yeah, so.
Oh, he did.
And if you get from Christmas. Yeah.
It doesn't take much time to get your walking in there. It's so huge, you can walk all the hallways and.
So do you do anything? Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the one. Yeah, but, let's see, they end at 11:30, because I start at 11. So it's like 10 to 11:30. And they have coffee, and then once a month, they have birthdays for everybody who is having a birthday, that, so people bring in cakes and other things. And then one Wednesday a month, they have a potluck.
Hey, that's another social thing.
Yeah.
So, I went to, I was in Silver Sneakers in Paulston.
Okay.
But then when COVID came, they closed it, slowed it down. And when I was working for the government, it was expensive to join that one. So now that Silver Sneakers, you can go there.
Yeah.
So now it's great.
Isn't the law something with certain Medicare insurance?
Well, a lot of insurance, medical insurance companies have a thing where you can get a free wide membership.
So
you can check with your insurance company and.
Silver Sneakers.
Oh, yeah.
Sneakers get you.
Yeah.
So, and you're.
Yeah.
And maybe people in your building that you don't even know doing that too. So.
Could be, yeah. I mean, I will not be everybody.
Yeah.
So,
Have you met Phyllis? No, what is her name? Oh, my goodness. Anyway, her last name changed. I think her husband passed away. Anyway, really long time. And she's just, she's been there for probably 5 years.
oh, she has? Okay.
Yeah. So I got in my head and get figure out, I can't remember her name now. Anyway.
Well, I'll see you around there.
Yes.
If I can do the Y thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll be, we always, I don't know, I just the relationship thing, just for my purposes, I started going to the Thursday morning Bible study, and.
I can tell you a story. My first time that I came was really awesome. So I had a lady introduce herself and she went to the table and gave me a bag and and another lady gave me the bulletin. And so I went into church and I sat towards the back and the side. And there was a man sitting behind me and he tapped me on the shoulder. And he's probably 90 years old. And he introduced himself. I said, well, I'm just new. It's my first time. And he said, yeah, this going on. And he says, I go to the Wednesday lunch and meet people there. He was the sweetest guy. And I thought, I met 3 people the first time I came. And other churches said, if you don't have it,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
The community is really welcoming and there are, and I think that whatever it is, because I mean, we've been in a church that's is growing even very fast right now. And they're really growing fast. So when we went back after COVID, this is just not what we're supposed to be. We didn't know what to do. But we've been online and it's been wonderful. As soon as we were seeing in person,
So I found this one, and I wanted, being a part, I wanted some activity with Christian people. So that's.
I'm so glad that you're here. It's been wonderful. And I see, but why somebody's. I'm so.
Beautiful, thank you. AIDS. Oops, forgot to shut this down.